All right, so welcome to the last session of Oliver Twist. And in this class, we are going to do the last three chapters. Chapter 12, Nancy Keeps an Appointment. Chapter 13, The End of the Gang. And chapter 14, The End of the Mystery. So finally, let's see how we've updated our character list. Now, we are introduced to Harry Maley that I'd already told you. He was Mrs. Maylie's son, Oliver's father. He's spoken about in this chapter. Monk's mother, Bet or Betsy, she was a member of Fagin's gang. Agnes, who was Oliver's mother, and of course, Rose Maylie turns out to be the sister of Agnes. That is, Oliver turns out to be her nephew. So let's see what happens in these chapters, the last three chapters. So in chapter 12, we see that Noah Claypole and Charlotte, they rob Mr. Sowerberry and they set off to London to start a new life. There they meet Fagin in a pub, and Fagin overhears them talking about their crime. Well, he invites them to join his gang, and they accept after an exchange of money is made, and they go and live in Fagin's house. Now, Nancy, she had made an appointment to meet Rose Maylie on London Bridge at 11 o'clock in the night every Sunday. And when she tries to leave, Sykes stops her, and she's wild when Sykes tries to stop her from leaving the house on Sunday at 11 in the night. And Fagin, he thinks that Nancy is having an affair with the new man. He knew that Sykes was a very violent man, and he thought that Nancy was probably fed up with Sykes and that she was having an affair with the new man. And he thought that it would be a great idea to include this new man in his gang and get Sykes out of the way because he did not like Sykes. Sykes had become dangerous even for him. So he plans to use Nancy to murder Sykes. He plans to, have Nancy kill him by poisoning him, and then he would always have something to keep Nancy under his thumb. So in that way, it would be a win-win situation for Fagin. He asks Noah to spy on Nancy. Now, the following Sunday, Nancy meets up with Rose and Dr. Brownlow, and she of course she gives them a lot of information, but she begs them not to harm Sykes or Fagin. Then I've got the rest of the stories here. The most valuable information that she gives them is that she tells them where they could find monks, and also about a bright red mark that he had on his throat, high up somewhere on his throat. And Mr. Brownlow seems to know him, but we don't know yet in this chapter whether he does. Noah overhears this entire conversation and he reports back to Fagin. Fagin is furious, very angry. And when Bill Sykes comes to visit him a little later, he tells him of Nancy's betrayal. Of course, Bill Sykes, he was angry and violent, and he rushes home. And then, in a frenzy of anger, he murders Nancy. Then we move on to chapter 13. Now, Bill Sykes, he leaves his home and he tries to run away from his guilt. Memories of Nancy haunt him. He finds no peace. He joins a crowd of people trying to extinguish a fire. But even then in the morning when he wakes up, he just can't get Nancy out of his mind and his crime out of his head. He just can't forget what he had done. Then he decides to go back to London. He thinks, well, at least there's somebody there who I can talk to. And then he thinks, well, I'll go back to London and then I'll escape to France. But then he thinks of his dog and he says, if people are looking for me, they're definitely looking for my dog. So he tries to drown his dog. And the dog, of course, he senses the danger. He senses the fear in Bill Sykes and he flees. In the meantime, Monks is kidnapped by by Mr. Brownlow, and he is forced to tell the truth about himself and Oliver. Mr. Brownlow turns out to be a good friend of Oliver's father, or Monks's father. And the story was that Monks's father Oliver's father, he was forced by his family into an unhappy marriage with an older woman. He didn't want to marry that woman, but he was forced by his family. And Monks was born out of that wedlock. Well, they soon separated. And 10 years later, Oliver's father, he met another family. And in this family, there were two daughters. One was 19 years old, and the other one was only 2 or 3 years old. He became engaged to the older daughter. And just then, what happened was that a rich relative died and left him a lot of money. So, Oliver's father, he left for Italy to get the money in his possession. Now, when he reached Italy, he became ill and he died. When Monks's mother came to know that, she went to Italy and she claimed all the wealth for herself and Monks. Now, before his father left for Italy, he left a picture of the girl he was engaged to, and whom he wanted to marry. He left a picture of that girl with Mr. Brownlow. He had told Mr. Brownlow about this girl that he wanted to get married to before he left for Italy. And when Mr. Brownlow met Oliver, he was very curious because he saw that resemblance between Oliver and that picture on the wall. And that was the same picture that Oliver's father had left him. So Mr. Brownlow had gone to the West Indies to look for Monks, but he had not found him there. So he returned to London to look for him. Now, Monks's mother, when she was in Italy, she destroyed his father's will in which Oliver was mentioned. And Monks had destroyed the proof of Oliver's birth and the relationship and his relationship to Monks, that locket which Mrs. Bumble got from old Sally. The Monks had thrown it into the river. So he destroyed the last proof of Oliver's relationship with him. Now, Mr. Brownlow, he tells Monks that, he better confess to all this, otherwise he'd get into some serious trouble. So he makes Monks an offer. He says, either you sign this document or you get into trouble. And if you sign this document and confess all the truth, you'll just be left alone. So Monks is scared and he pleads guilty and he agrees to confess to his crime. Now, in the meantime, Fagin is taken by the police and so is Noah. Charlie and another member, they manage to escape. Sykes and his dog, they join them, and a little while later, a crowd of people gathers around their hideout. This is another hideout. Next to, you can see here, it's a small little district in London, where their hideout was. And Sykes, he tries to escape. He uses a rope, and as soon as he puts the noose around himself, he slips and the rope tightens around his neck and he gets hanged accidentally. And so he dies. And his dog tries to, he jumps out of the window when he sees his master hanging from the rope, and he misses the body, and the dog just got smashed on the stones below, and he dies too. So in this video, we'll just do this much, chapter 12 and chapter 13. In the next video, I'm going to do chapter 14. I've completed that as well. You can see it here. And we'll discuss that, and we'll discuss all the conflict and the themes of the story in the next video. See you.